And so any thoughts on where we are relative to what you just read or as we scroll through?
So the thing that popped into my head relative to everything that I just wrote is that there is no consistent progress towards that goal. We have a good moment and then it goes away. We'll set a policy and then I'm assuming we're all agreeing to be transparent today, so I'll give an example. We currently have mask required in all school buildings. I was at a district basketball game on Thursday. Some people had on masks, some people didn't have on masks, the refs didn't even have on masks. And when I brought it up, the response that I got was not. And so that's just another incidence of, we'll set a policy to get us to a good place and then we don't follow it through.
Thank you. Anyone else share any thoughts? Raise your hand.
Go ahead, Megan.
Thanks. I didn't want to jump in, but yeah, so just building on that idea about consistency, I know that we have a lot of really great success stories for a lot of students, and I would love to see a more like visible and deliberate infrastructure to support that opportunity for all kids. So for example, one of the things that I wrote in there was that all kids should feel that there are high expectations for them. And so maybe just like looking at like, what are we doing in terms of training our teachers and building leaders to say like, to agree upon like, what does that look like? If in every classroom, every child has high expectations, like what does that really like look like and mean, you know, things like that. I'm not sure that there's that sense of cohesion yet. You know, so like that would be one example of another like consistency piece that I would love to see.
So consistency in follow through, consistency in practices that increase student efficacy, adult efficacy. Any other thoughts?
For me, the issue is at the board level. Now that we have 7 people, producing consistent direction, like this process itself of creating a vision for the district. All the things that other people are describing are like end outcomes, but because the vision is not in place, you know, we just recently executed the evaluation of superintendents, something that has not been done in 3 years. So like before we get down to how the individual building principals handling an event, there's larger things that the district has to get in place that have not been put in place. So the things that people are describing as disjointed or moments, they truly are that, because we don't have a foundation set in place.
Thank you. Which I hope makes sense as to why we start with that envision phase, because if we all have this collective island that we see out there in the distance that we are all rowing to. When I used to be a principal, I used to always say to my staff, we all want to go to the island of student achievement, but the issue is some people want to swim, some people want to take a jet ski, some people want to be in a motorboat. We all need to get on the cruise liner and all roll out there together. So that way we get there at the same time and we're all moving in the same direction towards the same thing, you know? And so when you have these one-offs or these people who are out doing these things, or so you may have one building that's doing this thing to fidelity. You have another building that has a variation on what they thought the rule meant. You don't have everybody moving in the same direction because there isn't a collective vision. So that's why we like to start with the vision piece. It's a Vice President Levy's point. Then we can get down to, we all agree that this is a collective vision. So help me understand why when we get to this athletic event, things aren't operating in service to making that thing happen. So, through the inquiry phase, some of the things, the activities we do, we look at the previous strategic plan. We'll capture some perceptual data. We can do that in the form of a SWOT. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as it relates to the school district of Beloit? We also have some system self-assessments. We have a DEI reflection tool. So we have some different tools that can help us get at further refining and fine-tuning that collective vision. And then we will create a current state analysis that will help the potentially identify some priority areas if you don't already have some that you'd like to see. In the second phase, as we design and develop the strategic plan, what are the priority areas of work going forward to make School District of Beloit's vision a reality for all students? So now we have this collective vision. We know where we are relative from the current state to where we want to be. What are the priority areas that are going to help us bridge that gap? And so how do we go about identifying the priority areas? So we identify what are the priority areas. We then create goals. We come up with strategies. We identify success measures. And then we put together the people who are going to own that work in the writing teams so that they can help flesh out all of the aforementioned details. Okay, so for example, if say talent development or human capital, you know, they have different names in different districts, but how you think about developing the humans that work within the district, that person, your HR director, most likely, would often be the person who's in charge of the writing team to help craft the goals, the strategies, and all of the success measures that we're going to say. All of these things are in service of making that vision come to life. And here's how we're going to use our human capital and leverage it to make that thing happen. And then if there was a curriculum goal, if you have a curriculum person, that person would probably lead that writing team. If you had a community engagement goal, you have someone who's going to lead that writing team. And then the person who owns the work, or the people or the department that own the work, they should be a part of the team that helps write those things. So that's what happens during the design develop phase. We get to the implement and succeed phase. The simple question is this: how does the work get resourced, organized, and progress monitored to make sure we are on track? Perfect. So when we get into strategic planning, we usually have 4 meetings. Okay. So the first meeting, we're going to come together with that strategic planning design team, and we're going to collect some perceptual data. Okay. Because we all are in agreement, I think, from what I just heard, there's a gap between what we want for all the young people in the district and where we are currently. Okay. And that's just from a small sample size of the people in the room and on Zoom. We do that on a larger level. We get some additional insights into where these other gaps exist. Okay. From there, we have a second design team meeting where we come together and we review all of the data that was collected. Here are the things that we do well. Here are the things that are some opportunities. Here are some things that are threatening our success. And here are some weaknesses that we might want to address in this plan. And so we come together as a design team and review that. That, from that design team meeting, is in meeting 2, we break into the writing team meetings, because we take that information and then we identify the priority areas, and then those leaders of those priority areas start working with their teams to identify the priority area, the goals, the strategies, the success measures. And those teams meet multiple times in between meetings 2 and 3 of the community design team. Because when that third meeting of the larger design team happens, they're going to be vetting and reviewing, here's the priority area, here's the goal, here's the strategy, here are the success measures. What say you as a larger design team? Do we have it on point, or is there something else we need to be thinking about? And so they get feedback to the design team. The design team gives feedback to the writing team in that third meeting, and then the writing team goes back to the drawing board and they further refine everything that they wrote, taking into consideration the feedback they got from the community design team. And by that last design team meeting, we're finalizing the plan. Any questions on the process?
What is the overview of the time frame? Is this like a 12-month process?
Can we table that conversation? See, I have an answer for you, but I think as a part of the larger conversation we're gonna have throughout the rest of this presentation, that is going to be a question that bubbles up to the surface.
Who is on the design team?
The design team, and if you look at the third handout on the right side of your folder, it says community engagement. Those are some people you might consider to be on your strategic planning and design team. And again, I think you all at the high school at least went through a portion of a graduate process. You might use that same process in terms of how you gathered your stakeholders. Those might be the same category of stakeholders that you use for your strategic planning design team. The strategic planning writing team are subsets of the larger team.
So the writing team will come out of the design team?
Yes, and it may be primarily internal district people, because at least not primarily, but I've seen it done both ways, where the writing team is composed of the people internally who own the work. And then they take that back to the design team, and the design team said, yeah, we think this is gonna help us achieve the goals that we've outlined.
And then how many might be on
It all depends, it varies from community to community.
based on how many, so based on the level of community engagement that.
It could be as large as you want, or it could be as compact as you want. But at the end of the day, what I tell clients is, you want to be able to feel good about the representation. And so that number could be 15, a number could be 100. Excuse me. So this is what you'll see, and this is what I just basically outlined. The first design team meeting, collecting perceptual data. Second design team meeting, we're gonna make some connections and we're gonna rate the data that was submitted. The writing teams will meet several times in between, meeting 2 and 3. Third meeting, design team is gonna review current state analysis, review a draft of the plan, and then that last meeting, plan is gonna get launched.
I need to ask my question.
Go ahead, Megan.
I don't know if you may have answered this, but at what stage of the process, like in the next couple weeks, are we identifying members that we think should be in the design team? Or could you speak a little more to how that works? And the only reason I'm asking is because we've had a lot of people already, like for months, like, oh, I'd love to be a part of this. I'd love to be a part of this. So could you kind of lay out for me exactly what that membership selection looks like and kind of what the timeline is around that?
So I would guess that a meeting or a kickoff for this process wouldn't begin in earnest until January. Because if you consider we're a week away from the Thanksgiving break, then we come back, we got a week, maybe 3 weeks between now and Christmas. You could probably get the coalition of the willing together in terms of who's gonna say yes and wants to participate in that month time between now and January. But January is when the engagement would kick off in earnest.
I was really hoping you were going to say January. That's awesome. Thanks.
Okay, and then here's the sample timeline. It just further solidifies. So if we started in February for the first design team meeting, second meeting would be in March, and then you see between March and April, you see 3 writing team meetings. And then between April and May, you see 3 more writing team meetings.
So is the way this typically,
Back to that, I'm sorry.
okay,
You can answer your question, I just need to see time.
well, thank you. Is the way this typically works is that all board members are involved in some capacity throughout the process?
So that varies based on the sunshine laws in terms of, like, is this considered, yes,
As long as we post it, then we can have full participation.
gotcha. So that is up to you guys in terms of how involved, if you want to be made aware. So for example, if Dr. Keiser led the process, but then gave you all regular updates during the meeting, and you weren't involved, or if you wanted to be on the design team. So that is a decision for you all to consider.
So just kind of looking at the sample timeline, that was a question I was gonna ask too, as we discuss it as a board about, the composition. And like I said, just because where we sit, that there are 4 current members that will be up for election. And so when we get to that 21st of that design team meeting, the reality is the composition of the board could have changed. So our planning for that at that point in terms of whoever would be involved, or if it was all board members, or if it changes, and then even the inclusion, the possibility of other board members that had not started the process. Just something to think about that composition, because I do think that one of my preferences is that our sitting board is a part of the development and not excluded in the development and setting of the vision. And I guess I would say that's inclusive of whoever will become elected at a certain point in time also. So I think to think about, if I'm looking at those dates, I see like.
And let me just, those are sample dates.
Right, I know the sample dates, but it still kind of gives us a time frame. But I think like declaration of candidacy happens early in January, so at that point, I think anybody who could possibly be a part of the board, we might consider their membership also on the design team.
I think that's a really good idea, and then even if let's say I'm a current board member that chooses not to run or is not reelected, you could still stay on as a community member. So I think that if we did both of those things, invited anyone who's interested in running, and then engaged our board to the level that we want to be engaged at, and knowing that you can continue on either way.
So nobody's left out.
Yep.
So the general model of the plan will be, there'll be a priority area, anywhere from 3 to 5 objectives, and then strategies within each one of those objectives. Any questions about the strategic planning process? Anything that I outlined, any of the phases or any of the structural components of the strategic planning process?
Can you go back to the other slide, the priority area? Just in general, how many, like, I guess maybe how many are we decide, but in terms of tackling for a strategic plan, how many priority areas might we identify?
So I've seen probably average of 5, because there's usually a fiscal goal, there's usually a student achievement goal, there's usually a priority area, there's usually culture, there's usually community engagement, and then that 5th one can vary depending on, sometimes people break finance and facilities into 2 separate silos, but I've not seen more than 5, and I've not seen less than 4.
Right, so then as we work on those 5 and achieve them, when we come back to the process of adding again, or those things have been settled and in place and we're achieving success, we take on the next 5 things that we might need to continue our continuous improvement.
So that's certainly one way to look at it. Or you can say, this is a living and breathing document. This is not something that we're going to complete. We're going to put some bells and whistles on it, and then it's going to live on the shelf and shrink wrap. This is something that we're going to put together. And if we notice that this priority area or this particular objective or strategy is not working, we're not going to wait. So say we did a 5-year plan. We're not going to wait till 2026 to fix something that's broken. We're going to go back in and fix that on the spot, okay? And so, whereas we'll have a plan that outlines things that we would like to get done between now and whenever the expiration date on the next plan is, whether it's 3 or 5 years, we also, want to be flexible enough to address issues or things that we see that aren't working. Or if there's something that was a strategy that was supposed to be enacted 2 or 3 years down the road, and we're like, no, we could probably do that right now. And we want to move that up, then we want to be flexible enough to do that.
The other question I would have is, as you're looking at what's happening in the district and what are the solutions to that? You know, there are a number of solutions to be part of that are outside of the school district control. Are those priority needs that's still identified and listed? I know that would be a goal.
Can you give me an example?
Well, we have a large population of low socioeconomic families. And so there could be needs within the neighborhood that need to be taken care of. Lack of affordable housing, lack of quality of housing, all of which impact the students' achievement or focus in the school building. So those are still needs.
Yeah, so the non-academic barriers you're talking about
Right.
that, you know, inhibit performance when kids get to school. So then some of those things might fall under the umbrella of community engagement. So like if that's a goal, then there might be an objective that we will increase partnerships with Boys and Girls Clubs, housing authorities, so on and so forth. And those might become how you address some of those non-academic barriers student plan. Now, obviously, you want a plan that is largely predicated upon what you all can control.
Right.
But it also makes sense to say, as a part of this plan, we understand we need a larger community to be supportive of it and to be actively engaged in it from their particular purview as well. Any other process questions? Okay. So last time we spoke, we talked about, and I heard here today, we need a collective vision. Okay? Because there isn't any currently unifying thing from K to 12 that we're all moving in service of. I misunderstand that, or are we in agreement that we need a collective vision?
Yes.
Okay, so something to consider. 20 years into the 21st century, our school systems keeping pace. And so Dr. Keys and I were having a conversation this morning about our children, and I was telling him that I have a daughter who is a sophomore in high school. And I am trying to convince her to become a small business owner because she loves photography. She took a young man's senior pictures as a favor to a family. They came out incredible. That family has now been making referrals. And now she's got a business opportunity. And that's not something that she's getting at school. And so how do I help her bridge that gap between small business ownership when that's not something that's being offered to her in school? And when you think about the ages of some of us, with the exception of Spencer, we were in school before the internet. Before you could be a YouTuber, an Instagrammer, or a professional video game player.
Let me tell you, the internet hasn't always been around.
No, sorry. And so when you think about the options that our young people have, that they can go do professionally and make more money than everybody in the room combined, how do we start to prepare them to be their own boss? Okay? As we push kids to higher ed, graduation, higher ed, college, what happens if they want to go into the workforce? Because some of these kids who are making big bucks as influencers or gamers and stuff like that, they didn't go to somebody's college. They went straight into the workforce. And so we have to now start thinking about what does school look like for the young people in Beloit? And if I'm passionate about going into the workforce, how is my school situation going to prepare me for that? As opposed to pushing us all, herding us along like cattle, all towards higher ed. Okay, and what has to change in service of making that happen? So, in light of how the world has changed, what do we want for the graduates here in the school district of Beloit? Anybody want to point out the difference between these two pictures?
So that happened right up the road in Janesville. A lot of us here, you got the auto factory, you got the Janesville assembly plant, your Tahoes, your Suburbans from GMC. That was a good job of Beloit, good job of Beloit. And then the robot, that does all the things that the human beings used to do.
Any other comments on that?
Well, the jobs have changed from actually doing the assembly piece to maintaining the equipment that does it now. So it's much higher, level skills that are needed.
Anything else?
Well, one of the other main things with this is that,
Sorry, Ms. Dooley.
Thank you.
so one of the main differences between this is, talking about the maintenance side of the machines that are doing the work now. You also have to have people that are able to code to actually get the machines to do that type of work. So there's that other avenue or aspect that you can take from that.
Absolutely. Anyone else?
What building off of what Spencer shared, you still need the art and the technique of doing artful welding so that it's not as simple as saying step 1, step 2, step 3, but then you have to turn that art into codes that are step 1, step 2, step 3.
So something I always tell clients, communities, when I put this slide up there is if you look on the left, that assembly line model is what the American education system was based on. Okay? Based on producing individuals who could go work on an assembly line. And on the right is where we currently sit in terms of what's needed in order to be successful. Because with the proliferation of automation, any job that has a pattern, that is linear, and an algorithm can be written for it, is going to be replaced by a robot. And so if we constantly position kids and put them in a position to where they're only thinking linearly and something that's logic-based, we're setting them up to be replaced through automation. And so we have to get them to start doing things intuitively that are often not linear in terms of one single solution so that they are prepared for that world on the right. Another way to look at that is student A, we continually focus on content. We're missing out on the other pieces and the development of those 21st century skills like critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity. Okay? And if you notice, student B still has the content in their column. So they still have the math, science, English, and social studies, but they have those additional skills over there as well. Okay? And so how would the students here in the school district of Beloit, if they had to choose which one of those two experiences they thought was their own, what do we think that survey would come back looking like? Is it predominantly A or predominantly B? Then if we ask the question differently, what do we think the teachers are driving? And is it because I think the kids need these foundational skills, so I'm gonna stay in the student A lane primarily, and I don't try to create student B experiences for them where they get opportunities to communicate and collaborate? And I'm talking about above and beyond just putting 4 desks together and say, you all work on this project.
That's collaboration.
Okay, that is collaboration, but that's like the floor of collaboration. Okay? So. Any reactions to that video? Get that a lot?
It comes back to the purpose of, that what we have to do is, not even think of, today, tomorrow, to the end of this school year. But, just like really having a vision that moves us towards those things. Because that, that's just where time captures where things are now. But that, the students that are in our 4K program right now, what will it look like when they're in 12th grade? Putting things in place for them.
Absolutely.
I think it's, we need to train for the skills that are needed now, but we also have to train them for jobs that don't exist yet. Because I think even most 8th graders, by the time they graduate, the jobs that are there don't exist at this point in time. So we have to be changing frequently to keep up.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, that content is important, but teaching children how to think it is a foundational piece so that they can adapt to whatever we can't even imagine right now.
And to be able to apply that thinking across disciplines, not just in one particular silo. So when you think about communication, for example, yeah, I can write a speech, I can give a speech, I can do a book report. What's it mean to communicate mathematically? What's it mean to communicate scientifically? What's it mean to communicate in social studies? And how do I take that skill of communication and transfer it across disciplines? And what kind of opportunities do we provide for the young people to do that thing? Or do we keep it specifically in one lane? Say communication only lives in ELA. Right? And what does that mean for the learning experiences here? So from a collective visioning perspective, we're going to do a little experiment. You all said earlier, this is what we hope, this is what we dream, this is what we aspire for our young people. We just saw a video, we just had a little light discussion about how the world has changed and how we need to make learning experiences change with them. We just had a comment about we need to prepare the young people for jobs that don't even exist yet. So what I would like for you to do in that same platform we were in earlier, before you do that, in your folder, right behind your agenda, there is a list of 30 descriptions of competencies. I'll invite you all to take 5 minutes or so to read over that list. And what you're going to do is individual. This is an individual exercise. Individually, I would like for you all to read through that list and pick your top 7. Okay? And so if you have something to write with, you can circle your top 7, but I also want you to load your top 7 into the platform, Meeting Pulse platform as well.
Is it on the same page that we're on for?
Yeah, so like if you go back to that, if you click on polls now.
Because there's no polls.
Uh-oh. I can fix that. That was where I started, but. Thank you, Spencer.
They spent you when I was in school. Well, when I got to college, they said, hey, they keep the internet at that building right there.
Jesus. I like the one that people are saying now, they're like, I like how my teacher said we want to have a calculator in our pocket all the time, but look at it now.
Try it now. It should be there, Spencer. You refresh.
There we go.
All right. So write your top 7 down as an individual and then upload your top 7 into the platform. And we're going to switch it up a little bit and engage in a group activity.
Is there a way that somebody could just like snap a picture of your list and just shoot me a text?
Or let me email it to you.
Awesome. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize for not.
No, it just my daughter just got a fever at 2 a.m. last night, so I would have given you more of a heads up. Sorry.
Is there a reason we're sticking to 7?
Yes,
Okay.
because that was just the number that came up.
No, that's not a reason.
Are you going to say that you want more than 7 or less than 7?
I need, well, I will work with 7.
Yes.
Because my first pass is to follow the rule. And if the rule doesn't work for me, then I intentionally decide not to follow it. I'm not at that point, so I'm gonna stick to 7, but there are a lot of great things on this list, so I would say more than 7.
You got an email.
Yeah. And on the plane, boy. What's that?
Reminded it, yes. My friends, so weird, like we go over to his house, we try using the internet, they dial up. And I'm like, what is this? Like, why do we make those weird sounds?
And then just to clarify, when we get our 7, we're popping those into the as you think about school district of Beloit in your vision, what are some potential priority areas? Is that right?
No, you're putting them on polls on that.
Oh, in the polls. Got it. Got it.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a buddy who still has an AOL email address.
Still great.
When you get desperate times call for desperate measures.
That's right.
I was lucky as a son.
We have parents who still have AOL.
Megan, did you get the list?
I did. It's overwhelming. And I see now why Amy asked about 7. So I'm going to need a minute.
Right. So make sure you have your individual 7 documented.
I got them.
All right.
You know what?
I know a lot, which what you want to discuss.
You need help?
No.
Going back, and you said like polls.
There's no looking.
Oh, so if you are back. This right here. It's still there. There you go.
That's
And if you look really closely though, at the top of this, it says choose all that apply.
Our instructor says 7. Stop trying to give me out the pass, Spencer. Are we gonna describe why we picked that?
Nope. You're not gonna describe it me, but
Okay.
what's gonna happen next? So you have your 7, Spencer, you have yours? You got your 7, Sean, you have yours?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got a couple more to go.
Greg has a couple more. Then Megan, let us know when you have your 7. You have yours?
I have my 7, but I feel like if we had 20 more minutes, like they would change, but I'm gonna just stick with the 7 that I have.
Yes, I want your 7.
I'm scoring 3 to 1.
We have a poster right across.
And these are what we exist already.
Not what we think exists already is, if you see, it says what we think students need to thrive now and in the future.
Okay.
So what is on that list? That if they left the school district with those 7 things, they would be prepared for work now, or life now and in the future.
Nope, just anytime really nice. Like, why don't I get some coffee? I'm like, well, you see.
Maybe have this because I feel like
Get it. A little like winded there.
All right, we're on the clock, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, so, okay. I thought we had to try to keep things in. I got it.
Actually, we got plenty of time. But this next activity, because I'm deviating from the script that I had planned.
Dr. Wilson, we may just start a conversation with this.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
Okay,
have-
so like I submitted mine in the poll. Is that what we're all doing?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what's gonna happen next.
Yeah.
All right. So I know we're in the middle of a pandemic and we're socially distancing and all that good stuff. But what you guys are now going to do is you're gonna provide that list of your individual 7 to what is the collective top 7. Okay. So I will give you all, let's say until 11:30 to do that. So 17 minutes. So you chose your 7, Greg has his 7, everybody in the room and Megan have their top 7.
Yes.
Now we're going from that top 7 to what is the board's top 7.
All right.
No. That's sleepy.
All right, I'm gonna put mine on the board and then someone else comes up next. And if you have any new ones, then you add them to the list.
That's
All right, I'm gonna drop mine in the chat. That sounds like a great plan.
There's an easier way to do this.
That's all like,
This is the way you want to do it.
How many years of experience are you speaking from right now?
Did we get Megan's out of the chat?
Okay, okay.
in no particular order.
We know what's better. Let's make it all messed up.
All right. Who's next?
So we got 9 people, but only, so if you haven't put yours into the platform yet, we need you to do that too. So I can then tell you what the individual results look like versus the collective.
Okay, so you're gonna go now.
Can we see results?
I'm gonna show you the
Oh, okay.
results after.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
Don't cross anything out, leave it, just add new stuff.
That means somebody else agreed with it. You need to know that there's more. Listen, I go over here.
You can pick a different color.
I don't need different color.
So this will have to go next.
I was ready to do that.
And so we'll follow VP Levy's lead in terms of put a check next to the ones that you have that are already up there, and then add the ones that you have on your list that aren't currently on the board to the bottom of the list.
Are we checking this list twice?
Holiday season is coming up, sir.
Really should.
What'd you say?
So we really, and it, I started the.
Well,
trend. We
it's
should-
no inside.
You live and learn.
I'm not gonna say that. I think that, when you wrote yourself,
Yeah.
it was gonna be, that's a. Wait, that's a.
So put a check mark next to the ones that are up there that you currently have on your list, and then to the rank, start a smaller.
If you should get, board president Miller's up on the list too. I think that should be.
James said that he was gonna.
Dan on it.
Yeah, I copy pasted mine into the chat, but like I can just go last. You guys like do your thing.
You didn't circle yours already?
Oh.
I'm gonna apologize at that time, my handwriting is.
I was gonna volunteer too.
It's not safe.
Julie, you guys.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
I was forced to.
You're in the room.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, don't stop.
Something else. What's some candy over there
Dr.
too?
Keezer, tell me, Megan's, and I'll,
Oh, I've got it written down, so,
or you just tell me, I'll shout it up here.
oh, adaptability,
Adaptabilities, we're gonna put a check here.
civic literacy,
Civic literacy, there's another check there.
global citizen,
Global citizens, so that's a third check there.
It's trending.
integrity,
Integrity.
learner mindset,
All right, so that's
What time are we
check
eating?
there.
problem solving,
Problem solving.
resource,
You know, there's, Rachel said.
I don't.
And there's a toaster.
Me.
Yours? Okay, you tell me yours, and I'll put it up here.
adaptability,
Adaptability, there's another.
collaboration,
I think you had already checked adaptability for him.
Nope, we checked it for,
Okay.
you said collaboration?
creativity, empathy, global citizens. Learner mindset.
Yes, ma'am.
Communication.
Jason, yep.
Conscientious.
Conscientious.
Creativity.
Activity.
Entrepreneurial.
Yep.
Environmental responsibility.
Okay.
Integrity.
Integrity is up there.
And,
What do you say after integrity?
after integrity is, technology.
Literacy. Okay. That was yours?
Yes.
Greg?
I had adaptability,
Yep.
conflict resolution, critical thinking,
It's on
Okay, that was right.
entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial,
Yep.
global citizen,
Yep.
innovative,
Innovate.
and resourceful.
Yep.
I got one more.
Yep, I have adaptability,
Adaptability,
collaboration,
integration,
communication,
communication,
confidence,
confidence,
and financial literacy,
yep,
leadership, and technology literacy.
tech lit. All right. So we had global citizen with 6. 6. We have adaptability with 5. We've got communication with 4. We've got entrepreneurial with 3. Financial literacy with 3. Confidence. 3. Activity 3. Civic literacy. 3. Tech literacy. 3. So you can see if we were to start a board portrait. In fact, let's take a break because I got a way I'm going to show this to you. Go ahead and take a break. We will come back in a moment.
Find a moment.
Give me 5 minutes. Make sure you enter.
Somebody get Sean some meat.
Okay,
I got chilies coming.
No, that would be inappropriate. But I appreciate the offer. Are you excited?
Now, what process, meetings, you dropped your. Here were your top 7 individual submissions. Okay, after global citizens and adaptability, The last four are civic literacy, communication, confidence, and financial literacy, all had the same amount of percentage, and collaboration was the next highest afterwards. So those are your top 7 individually.
Oh,
Okay, based on individual percentages, okay? This shows how many you all had in common. This is what you guys did as an individual. This showed how many you guys had in common, okay? Now, think about this list right here for your high school portrait. Fearless learner, ambitious innovator, global contributor, resilient leader, critical thinker, effective communicator. Right? There's a little overlap. You see communication on there. You see global on there. Any other overlaps? Not very much, besides those 2. Okay, here's a different competitor.
no. That is, okay, so there's a couple.
Well, hold on, back up, I'm being rude by interrupting, but it is for a purpose. So the list that you have, that was compiled by what groups?
Which, this list right here,
Yes,
okay, that is what's on your district website.
no, but who sat down and put in the work to come up with that list?
4 NGL,
This was a compilation of 50 community stakeholders and 25 district stakeholders.
Okay, I don't think it's the end of the world, but it's not great, that there's not much overlap. If we did a Venn diagram, there's not much overlap.
We got a solution.
Okay,
this aligns great with your digital list. First of all, this high school portrait of a graduate, that was developed, as we said, for our 4th NGL high school transformation model. 25 district people, 25 community people. 50 community people, so let's say 75 there. To my knowledge, I know that board member Wong was a part of that development of that. So when you look at the vision of the portrait of a graduate, that's one school board member developing that. And our vision is gonna be larger than just what the school board wants, but we have not registered the collective vision of the 7 elected members also. So when I say that it's different, and that's a good thing, board member Levy, the reason that it's different is because although Lloyd Memorial High School is what we can consider the end of the line, because that's where our students come from, but we also have other programs, schools in our district that people come from. Lloyd Memorial High School, as big as it is and being a urbanized part of our identity, that is not everybody in the school district of Lloyd. To me, that portrait of a graduate, that is the vision of one school building. What we are doing today is setting a vision for our district. And it's not a big deal to me that what 75 other people came up with as what they want to see come out of Lloyd Memorial High School is different than what the district is trying to produce altogether. Because that might be what needs to happen for kids that are in high school 9 to 12. And when I made my list from these words, I'm thinking about students that are in 4K through 12.
Yes, I would agree that when we talk about a graduate profile, we're talking about, these are the things that when they enter high school, we're gonna be intentional about infusing and incorporating throughout their experiences. When we think about strategic planning and maybe we need to come up with a different title or a different, word to encompass that journey from when they come in as 3 and 4-year-olds and they graduate, wherever they graduate from, intersecting with us, whether it's the high school, whether it's BLA, whether it's Fresh Start, they are being infused and instilled intentionally with those competencies that we're going to do across their entire learning lifespan with us.
So I'd like to just add to that particular thought. So I did this intentionally. So I wanted to illustrate the point that I heard at our previous meeting, that there was a disconnect because that vision was the high school exclusively. And what the goal of people who put this together was, how do we come with a collective vision for our board that encompasses K through 12 or for K through 12, not just the high school. And so there is a way we can reconcile both of those things and still honor the work that was done at the high school while also creating a collective vision that goes 4K through 12. And so one of the things, if you look, so again, we started the activity and you see that global citizen, adaptability, and communication, those were the clear front runners of the people in the room, but then we had a bunch of best of the rest. Now we can continue with that activity and ultimately round out the list, but I want you to see there is some overlap in terms of we were starting to see communication, we got global citizen, but adaptability isn't anywhere up there. Okay? And so if we continue with this exercise, it's very possible that the 6 might have 3 that match and 3 that different. Or it might have been 5 out of 6 matched, and that adaptability was the only one that wasn't up there. But one way we can reconcile those two things is if there is a creation of a portrait or profile of a learner that encompasses 4K through 12, but then the high school is the things on top. So that's like the seasoning that we sprinkle on top of what we're making K through 12.
I like that. I like the idea of your use of developing learners, and that when they get into high school, and I like your analogy, the sprinkles on the top. So in addition to all of those competencies, we are layering in the work that the high school is doing with their academy model.
Like, the thing that I would add also too is like, having the preview of the exercise. And like I said, we're looking at these competency description. I mean, let's say there's 40 words on the page. We're picking from the 40 words that are on the page. And I understand like the synthesis has probably gone on to make sure that these are the 40 words that are gonna be on the page. But from another perspective, to say our localized situation in Beloit and our racial history, the way that Black people came to this community and what our involvement has been, the way that our Hispanic population has come to this community, and the way that Black, white, Hispanic students of multiple races now, what that reality is for us in Beloit. That what I would say is when I chose global citizen, because out of all the words that are available, that is what most represented the diversity issues. And I think that's probably why it made our list. And then likewise, when I see confidence with 3, and I think about the myths of white superiority and Black inferiority, that's why I chose the word confidence, because out of the 6,500 students that we have students who are coming from economically disadvantaged households. We have students who are Black, Hispanic, and multiple races, and the education that we need to provide them so that they can enter the world and participate with everyone else, along with giving them a great education. But if you still don't have the confidence to walk in a room full of white people and not be intimidated because you're not white, that's an issue. And so that's a specific. And then also when I think about our students, like I said, for global citizenship, that are white students who are part of Beloit and have grown up in a diverse environment, when they walk into places and they don't see people of color, they be like, this is a little weird, what's going on in here? So that, when we think about like that civic literacy, that's there about what we want to see in our community. So the broad terms are there. But then that's also the specifics of talking about our community, where those things have to be brought out.
And I'll just illustrate, and again, one thing that I heard loud and clear, which is what brought us to this moment today, was it was more important to get it right than to get it done. Okay? And so one additional piece that we might consider, again, is if we were to create and adopt a profile of a learner, what does that mean in terms of how do we address multiple things that we want to get done with this process? Go ahead.
Megan, jump in.
Oh, right. No, I was just going to ask a question. Going back to your previous slide, in your professional experience, is there space for like that broad base 4K through 12 piece? Could we create a relationship to show how the high school portrait grows out of those pieces? For example, I see how like resilient leader would be an outcome of a goal of adaptability. You know what I'm saying? Like, is there space for that extra dimension of like, rather than seasoning on top, like kind of creating a connection between here's the broad base of 4K through 12, and here's how that broad base of 4K through 12 cultivates these, what is it, 6 pieces from that high school portrait? Or is that not a direction that we need to go in?
Megan, I would say from being a part of that work with the high school portrait was when you take a look at the descriptors on the back, these were the titles of the competencies were the result of the high school students going through, and so it's not just about content mastery, it's about being a fearless learner, right? And so they came up with the descriptors, and so these are their words and elevating their voices in that, but there is a lot of connection. So to me, it's a both and. We are creating something that represents the collective voices, starting with the board today and expanding outward. And it is honoring the work that started before this work started. Some of it is going to be infused with, but there are also going to be pieces on top of, and that's why I like Colin's analogy. I was saying it's our work and this, when they get to the high school, this is additional work that is going to be infused on top of that. But it's not necessarily always going to be in addition to, it's going to be in support of.
Yeah, because I see like a lot of similarities actually between our list and that list. And but I mean, I do see a lot of connections there. So I just wanted to raise that point. But no, this all sounds awesome.
And it's very possible that if we went through this exercise for the rest of the school community, that there would be one-to-one correspondence between what came out of the high school portrait and then what is expected for everyone else. Go ahead.
Since the high school developed theirs first, if we wanted to copy this, unless it's right in front of us, we just wrote those words down. That's not what happened. I think that like the other part of it, it just comes back to the same things that we've talked about, even that for the school board members, so we can speak in one voice. If this is our 7, then that's what we're going into the design team with, is these 7. And at that point, then we're able to have already articulated that, and whatever else comes out afterwards can be added. But that's the space of when do we convene ourselves to have our thoughts collected, so they're not individual thoughts, but the thoughts of the board.
And so can I just sort of respond to that? So through our process, and again, I don't know exactly how you arrived at the high school portrait, but we do it through 4 meetings. And in that first meeting, we talk about how the world has changed and why learning experiences need to change with it. And we talk about the world through what we refer to as landscape shifts, or shifts in 4 key areas. 1, workforce shifts. 2, shifts in technology in terms of pace of change. 3, shifts in different demographics or global shifts. And lastly, shifts in human interaction. And so from that meeting, We talk about, here's how the world has changed, and some examples, I'll give you an example. We talk about innovation. So back in the day, we had the VHS, then we went to the beta room, then we went to the DVD, then we went to the Blu-ray. Now we're streaming. So as things continue to innovate, what does that mean for learning experiences for young people? If you think about changes in the workforce, some of us are old enough to remember when you had to go to the bank to withdraw money and deposit money.
Right.
Now you can do that right here. Okay? What does that mean for learning experiences for young people in Beloit if bank tellers don't have the same level of cachet that they used to back in the day, because now I don't have to go into the bank if I don't want to. Okay? What does it mean for learning experiences? Again, Spencer, there was a thing before the internet that was the internet, and those were encyclopedias. You probably never seen an encyclopedia. Okay? But encyclopedias were the internet before the internet. Okay? And on top of that, when you think about, now we can ask kids a question, it's right here. Okay? We've all heard the term, knowledge is power. Okay? When that term first got coined, it was because if you withheld knowledge from a specific group of people, that's how you maintain power. Now, the power is in, how do I discern what's true and what's not true when I'm constantly being bombarded with knowledge? And so that's what happens in that first meeting, and we get some group consensus around, yes, these are things that we want our young people to be prepared for. And we end the meeting with how we started today, which is, what are your hopes, dreams, and aspirations? We come back together in that second meeting, we answer the question. What are your hopes, dreams, and aspirations? We get on the same page in terms of, here's what we want. Then we give them those descriptions that you have. And we say, go ahead, Sean.
So the other thing is like, so going into meeting one, let's say we came out of here with, these are the 7 words on November 20th, 2021, that the board in a forum and a convened meeting in a quorum. These are the, because when we walk in, we're not walking into 7 people. We're walking in as a board. These are the board's 7 words, go along with the other 50 people in the room. And so it's not a reproduction of what we just did. We're walking into the meeting with our 7 words, go along with the other 50 people's words, and then whatever come out of that will be what comes out of that. That's the for me, that was the purpose of us having this meeting.
Got it.
So we know what our 7 words are, and then able to go into that next phase. Because prior to this, we don't have agreement about what we all believe that we want for our children.
So again, there's a couple ways we can reconcile that, because we can spend the remainder of the time going through a modified version of this so that we leave here with, here are the board's 7. And as a board, here's the 7 we're coming forward with as we start the strategic planning process. Okay? So that's one way to go about doing it. The question on the table, though, seems to be, what is that collective vision that you are advocating for this 7? Is that what's going to be the K-12 vision?
Well, I think that for the 7, I'll say like this, as I've said here, thinking as a board member, I'm thinking about 4K to 12.
Yeah.
Like I said, thinking about the high school, what was there, they were talking about Bullet Memorial High School. And the reason that their work is there before ours is because the strategic vision and planning for the high school happened before it did for the district. So to not impede the work that they were already engaged in, all those things were allowed to continue. It's not a problem that work has happened. It showed us that they were engaged in something. But we are in a space where our district has to get in front of and set a vision for other things. That just helps us to know that our high school is already currently engaged in something. I don't see a conflict between what the high school is engaged in and what we're trying to do as a district.
Dr. Lewis, can you help transition us from our 7 collective words, if that needs to be established, and how that translates into priority areas? Because I think that's the next step, is that correct?
Right, so if what we're going to, go ahead, Dr. Kaiser, and I'll ask your question.
And I agree, Amy, that transition is where I think we're heading, but to the point, I viewed that as there could have been a space in doing the process where all 7 board members came and were a part of that larger group and thereby incorporating it. And yet I feel like what the process has shifted to is we're having this as a separate process. So collectively, there may still be 7 board members that all show up as part of this group that's doing this work, but collectively there is a something called that these are the 7. When that poll goes in, the board poll has already been predetermined, opposed to the individuals at the table, as I understand it.
Yeah, I mean, so there is a number of different ways we can go, because one of the points that the VP brought up was that we should probably consider inviting the people who could potentially be in the board candidate pool.
We don't know who those people
Well, we don't know who those people are, and so that adds a level of, okay, if this is the group that makes that 7, but then this isn't the group that's there at election time, what does that mean post-election in terms of this group establishing that 7 up front?
So what would happen is this, and you are kind of describing it accurately, and this is what was the holdup with strategic planning earlier, is because we do need to establish one clear voice and vision from the school district, and that is the 7 of us. When we were discussing like the design team, let's say today we have all met and we come out with our 7 words and we come out with our priorities. That is the board doing its job of establishing vision and direction. Now, what we've said is we're going to be inclusive, or we're going to discuss being inclusive. Let's say there's 6 people running in the spring election, and we'll know that in early January. That along with the current board members that are sitting, those 6 people would be invited to participate also as citizens. It doesn't take anything away, but we have a responsibility to show up to it's my opinion, that as the school board, we have a responsibility to show up with a vision and priorities. And then we also hear from our community in that process, because our community's vision and priorities might be 7 different words and 5 different things that we don't have. But since we are engaged in working with them that they're not, there might be some things that overlap the same way we have some things that overlap with high school. But it's that synthesis that, since 7 of us cannot speak for the whole board, that we have to go in with our work already done first for those pieces to be there, and then we incorporate everything else together, and it gets blended together to come out with, this is what our community's plan was from that whole engagement process. So we have to come with we have to do the pre-work now to come to the meetings with our voice, because the 7 of us can't develop our voice in that meeting with everyone.
So the path forward is, one path forward we can take this list, and again, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Left that were 3 each, and we can round out the 6 by continuing through the exercise. Let's say we take, depending on how long the lunch break is, take some time. We got a hard stop at 1, is my understanding. Take some time, finish that list, reconcile that list, and then generate a list of priority areas that will then be part of the community engagement process when we start strategic plan.
Perfect.
That work?
Yes, it was you 20 minutes for lunch and jump back in.
We could eat and continue to work, have a working lunch, it's up to.
I need a
Okay.
break. They can be short, they can be 15, but I.
Yeah, okay, 15, and then if you're not done eating, we're gonna start the work.
How about we go until Ms. Dooley comes back, she's out getting the other.
Well, and here's the thing, and you could be thinking about it during the time you're eating lunch.
Yes.
Is between civic literacy, creativity, confidence, financial literacy, entrepreneurial, tech, learner's mindset, in reading the descriptions, which of these are you willing to advocate for?
On it.
And then and again, so when we say adaptability, here's what we mean as an SDB board. So do you all want to go through, and that's not in this meeting or this time, but something you have to be mindful of is when we start the process, if you're coming to the design team and saying, here are 6 competencies, or here is our collective vision for SDB graduates, or learners. If somebody says, well, what does that mean? Are you just gonna give them the sheet that you all made the selection from, or are you gonna tailor it? Because I heard Sean say earlier, he chose confidence because that is something that means and resonates with them that he wants for the young people.
I think the tailoring would be appropriate
Right.
in a different setting.
Yeah, so that's something that's some homework for you guys in advance of, so if we're saying on the timetable, and that's the other thing, so we're gonna identify potential priority areas before we get out of here. We're gonna establish a time for the work, and then we're gonna just float out some ideas about design team composition to be done.
Does it make sense that, that the tailoring of the descriptors comes once we have that, this list? I mean,
No.
I understand the board is creating its list in preparation for those 4 meetings and creating a final list that's going to.
So the strategic planning process does not include competency selection.
Okay.
So the process that I outlined, so we're taking this meeting as the envisioning process. And then from envisioning, we're going into the inquiry phase. So here's our vision in terms of here's the board's 6, 4K through 12. Here's how we're defining this. That'll be you all's homework. So if we're starting this in January, your homework is between now and January. After we round out the 6 today, when we start the process and go to the community and say, here's our collective vision, 4K through 12, it doesn't have to look similar to what the Lloyd Memorial thing is, but you want to have some description so that if it's not the exact same thing, the community understands here's what our school board means when they say these are the things that they want. Okay. And then, yep. And then you guys will have that homework to do, as well as recruitment for the design team. So that'll be your homework as well. And then thinking about what might be some potential priority areas and who will be the internal person that owns the work. So that person can then start to think about who's going to be on their writing team when it comes time to start thinking about goals, objectives, strategies, and all of those things. So 2 of those 5 things are just, actually 3 of the 5. 4? No, 3 of the 5. 3 of the 5 are pretty much, you guys just said you will do the descriptor work, and so that's a check. You guys know who you're thinking about targeting for participation on the design team? Or
I'd say like we know 7 board members, I think.
I think we're gonna open it up for community members, but we know any candidates, we definitely want to invite them.
And then our community, the reflecting of the spread.
Right.
Stakeholders.
So you guys will be taking care of the design team piece. And then if we're saying a January start, so this gets back at the answer to your question you asked earlier, what's the timetable? So if we have the first design team meeting in January, we collect perceptual data from the community and get some feedback on the priority areas that may be generated today. Then the next meeting will be in February. So we'll come back after I get an opportunity to synthesize the data, collect some more data from you all. We'll share that with them, at which point we'll settle on and land on specifically the priority areas that will guide the plan. So you all will come with some feedback or some suggestions today for here's where we think we might want to focus on our plan. We come to that first meeting, we're gonna do a SWOT, we're gonna collect some perceptual data around. We need to do it in those respective areas. So you guys outlined 5 areas today, we can set the SWOT up to where they're saying in each one of those areas, here are strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and then in that subsequent meeting, we can then fine tune that list even more, at which point then we transition to the writing team. So if we have 5 priority areas, 5 people who we know within the district are gonna lead that work, then I transition to meeting with them regularly in between the second and third meeting.
I have a quick question. Who identifies the SWOT from our priority areas? Is that us in like partnering with Patel?
Yes, so I will come back and facilitate another meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I guess one piece that maybe I haven't missed in the conversation was the going out and collecting the stories from community members to bring back to the design team and incorporate all of this. So is that between now and that time, is that a process or is that?
So that's a great question. And I have a proposal for you all as well, in terms of, I think we should spend the last little bit of time we have together identifying potential priority areas and going over the logistics. Because if you guys still have to do the task of fleshing out and writing out the descriptions for you can take part of your time to do that, to finalize the last 3, and then the rest of that meeting to then write the descriptors for it. Because we can get the last 3 in the 30 minutes that we have left, and we can talk about priority areas, but we're gonna be rushing through that. Right. And I'm happy to do that, but I just wanted to point that out.
Can you hear me now?
I think you're giving us a choice. You said that we can finish getting our 7 words and then our priority areas.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be 7, it could be 5, it could be 6, but I just did top 7 because it's an odd number, and most of the portraits or profiles usually land around 6 or 5. So you don't have to make it 7 completely. You all may say that, you know what, there's some overlap between, civic literacy and tech literacy, so you might combine those. And say we want to be civically and technology literate. You might say that creativity and financial literacy and entrepreneurial, we want them to be, you guys can come up with the nomenclature for that.
Okay, so 2 questions.
Yes.
One, There was an email that went out that said we had a hard stop at 1, and I don't know what was behind that. Are we able to go to 1:15? Are we still at a hard stop for 1?
The hard stop for one was because of me, because I have some place to be and I have to set the alarm and stuff.
Perfect, all right. Then let me ask this, do we need to settle on our words, because our words are gonna help us with our priority areas, or are those two separate things?
Those are two separate.
Okay, then I would like to use this time focusing on our priority areas, so we're not taxed. That's just me.
Right, and so, and the only caveat I would add to that is that whatever the priority areas you select or plan on, they should be in service of those words. You don't need the words up front, but you have to have in your mind that whatever we land on in terms of our 6 profile of the learner attributes, whatever we come up with, we just need it for the priority areas, we just need to have an understanding that these priority areas should work in service of making those things happen.
Sounds like that's what we're gonna do. We're in agreement.
Yep. And so you can do a couple things. We can do this conversation a couple different ways. So here's the question before us: what are the priority areas of work going forward to make that vision that you all wrote about earlier a reality? So think about the hopes, dreams, and aspirations that you jotted down earlier, and then think about the completion of that list. And so we know we've already started the list with global citizens, adaptability, and communication. We know those were the ones that more than half of the people are selected. So as we think about those hopes, dreams, and aspirations, we think about the 6 attributes for our collective vision. What should be the areas that lead or that the plan is found?
We just popcorn in there.
You can popcorn it, or if you want to jot your ideas down in the platform, you can do that as well. And so going back to the same platform where you did your hopes, dreams, and aspirations, the question right underneath that is, what are some potential priority areas? And so you can just put some ideas in there and see where we're going. So just scrolling through the list as I see you guys populating, so they're clear, there's a theme of student achievement. There appears to be a theme of community engagement. I think there is a theme around the in terms of participation piece, in terms of collaboration. There's a talent development or human resources piece. There's a physical piece. There, underneath that culture, there's the academic interventions, which could be the MTSS plan. There's DEI. And so there are some ideas or some potential areas that can come out of. There's some themes that are emerging as I'm looking through this. So I'll leave this platform open beyond today's meeting. So if you guys think of other things after today that you certainly want to consider, but again, there are some themes. So I'll synthesize this information, share it back with you all in terms of here are the themes that seem to have emerged from that. And then you guys can say, yep, that's spot on, or no, we want to add this area as well. So I'll try to get it down into 5 areas or less so that we're not trying to boil the ocean like a planet. And we'll go from there. Any objections to that? Okay. And I think as you guys scroll through, you're seeing the same thing that I'm seeing around some of these themes that are emerging. So it's just a matter of, I'll go through and come up with broad categories and then use the comments that you all made or the suggestions to show where it supports that broader theme.
I would just add this nuance. For me, I see a lot of community engagement, and then I specifically put parent and guardian engagement because I think those two things are different. We want to have good community partnerships, but one thing that I really think can enhance the work that we're all attempting to create is to genuinely and consistently involve parents and guardians in the success of their students.
And that's one of the questions that when I go back through, I'll pose back to you all in the form of an email to Dr. Keiser. So that particular nuance that you just outlined, does that fall under culture? Because I put it under culture in terms of the parents feel welcome when they come into, you know.
I'm fine with wherever it's placed,
Right.
as long as it's clear that that's different than community engagement.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and both things can be true, you know, as a part of community engagement, we certainly want to interact with and have outreach with parents, but as a part of culture, we also want them to feel a certain way when we interact with them, issues related to academic achievement, support, so on and so forth. So are we in agreement for January start?
Are you wrapping us for the day?
I know, yeah.
This felt like a conclusion.
No. I'm just trying to make sure that we all have marching orders and know what we're doing when we leave the meeting, like in that we have a expectation of, okay, this is all getting underway in earnest in January. And so here are the checklists of things we all need to do, that you all need to do as a board, that I need to do as a facilitator, and make sure that this goes smoothly.
And so kind of to summarize, for a January start, means the board needs to finalize it, using competencies with descriptors. Begin to, lay out constituency groups to be part of that strategic design team. From that strategic design team will come the writing teams, correct? And then, there needs to be a district liaison who I'll volunteer myself to partner with you in terms of figuring out the logistics of the day-to-day pieces.
Right, because what I'll need, like, for example, one of the logistical pieces will be, say, for example, there's a human resource goal that, seems to be bubbling up. If you have a director of HR, we're gonna need some time to go back and forth in terms of templates, different tools that we'll use that they can start to put their goals, objectives, and strategies into. But then we'll go back and forth as I'll be the thought partner and say, okay, have you thought about this? Is that actually measurable? What are the measurables? Measures of success that you haven't considered.
Which is open right now, so anyone who's listening, please apply. Shameful plug. But yes, that helps, because then getting to the next piece, which I see you up there, talking about how do we collect those stories. And then I guess one piece, which is probably further down the road, but to foreshadow, that design team is an entity that will do the work, but then be a group that we come back to throughout this process once the strategic plan is finalized and adopted and being implemented, to get to present to in addition to the board and get feedback from.
Yeah, so the design team has 3 jobs. One, provide feedback in the form of the SWOT. Their second job is to, they actually have 2 jobs. Provide feedback in the form of a SWOT. Actually, it's 3. 2, verify that we think these priority areas align with our community vision. And then lastly, give feedback on the plan itself, the draft plan and the actual plan. Now, go ahead.
One of the things is, we were kind of talking about how to do this, President Miller. One of the things I think is that some of this stuff might have to get added to a governance agenda, so we can finish like lining these things out. So that we can get this work done and start in January. And there's 1 or 2 other things, like we talked about our participation. And that to add others, like potential board candidates to the design team, so that whatever the outcome is, everyone is going to be part of developing it, so that we actually could start the 22-23 school year with a plan in place. And that is what we're working on, and that goes into other things like superintendent evaluation, where it talks about the board having goals that the superintendent is working towards. Trying to get all of that work in alignment, but like I said, there's a couple things as we're talking about these attributes and these words, and then defining our participation. It seems like the governance meeting would be the place to kind of work these things out, get it back in front of the board members, so we can commit to that action and get things done.
Mom,
Yeah. Oh, hi. Yeah, I totally agree. I was thinking kind of the same thing. So maybe when we meet, we can get that added to our next agenda, and then we could put on our December regular board meeting agenda item that pertains to the work that we'll do in the governance board, just so at least we can give an update, even if it's just for discussion and how we're moving forward. Would that work?
Megan, could you repeat that, because we had people for having that.
Oh yeah, no problem. Plus I have a helper, so I apologize. But yeah, I was just saying I was thinking the same thing, Sean. I think that we should include now I just lost my thought, but we should include like just the membership of I just lost the term. I'm so sorry.
Design team.
Design team. Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking, why don't we just add the design team piece to our next governance committee meeting? And then for our first December board business meeting, we can provide, even if it's just as a discussion, just an update about what our thoughts and planning are that we go through with the governance committee meeting so that prior to the holidays, the holiday break, everybody can be on the same page, kind of what those logistics will be. And Dr. Lewis, I would certainly love any suggestions or guidance from you about like, what are those logistic pieces? And I see that's later on your slide, right? That we should be considering between now and January.
Megan, do you want me to update the governance agenda for this coming Tuesday to include strategic planning discussion?
As long as that's okay with the other members of the committee, I think that would be a good idea.
Okay, well, I'll do it right now so that we can repost before we leave tonight.
And so a question that I would ask you all to also consider is what types of data so you had mentioned several times, Dr. Keyser, about the storage, the community storage. What data do you want to collect to help with the strategic plan? And what I mean by that is, so we can certainly set it up and crowdsource. Here's the community hopes, dreams, and aspirations. So we can do that same exercise where you can send that link out. If there's many people who want to respond, we can do that. And then I can spin that up and provide that back to you all. Another way we can do it is we can ask the community, what are your top 7? Okay. And just to see if there's alignment between your 7, the high school 7, and what the community is saying. These are the skills that we believe. So that's another thing. We could say, out of this meeting came 5 priority areas. We want your feedback on these. Do you think these are the right 5? We can set it up and crowdsource it that way. We can get SWOT perceptions from the community above and beyond those members who are on the design team. Because we're going to do that with the strategic design team anyway. But if we want a larger sampling of here's what we're doing well, here's where we got weaknesses, here's some opportunities and threats, we can crowdsource that information as well. And so again, you don't have to make a decision at this moment, but what do you all want to know from the community so that you feel good about this process moving forward?
I appreciate the opportunity for us to reflect and think about that. I feel in the 18 months that I've been in this role and intersecting with community members that the past have been surveys and there are certain constituency groups that will respond to surveys. But actively getting out of district environment and going to the community and collecting those stories where they are. And really, I think the board prioritizing the list, because for me, I would say everything you just shared would be things that I would want to collect because I would rather have more information to synthesize a global theme that aligns to strategic plan. But if the board says here from that list are the top 2 things that we most feel we want to hear from the community, it is important, I think, for this community that groups that have not been asked to the table simply because they don't feel comfortable coming to the table where it's located, or have just never been asked outright, that we go over and above to go to where they feel comfortable to get those stories in before we have that first strategic design team meeting so that we can bring that to the team.
So that's an interesting plot twist.
I'm open for flexibility. There's a bit of flexibility in there.
And so would you propose, and that sounds like, would you do it regionally in terms of break the city into, or the district into 4 quadrants, north, south, east, and west, and go host a community meeting within each one of those quadrants? And so that is community-based, and to your point, you're going to them, and they're having an opportunity to come in their element and share their thoughts? Or how would you propose to go do that?
I have a suggestion. I really like that idea if we did like two listening sessions. We did one on the east side, we did one on the west side. And I think another thing that would be really effective is that if we empowered our teachers, I can't remember which like town hall feedback it was, but there was a couple or one amazing teacher at Hackett that was like, no, this is the story from this family and this is the story from this family, and translated the responses and sent them to us. So if we can put an ask on our educators to reach out to the families that you serve, I think we can pull a lot of information that way. And then if we go physically to where people are on their side of town, and do that listening session, I think that's just another layer of receiving information.
I mean, on that way, I would almost just suggest 4 then, and go to the 4 intermediate schools. Sensitize so people like agree with look to their school versus
No, that's cool.
one or the other. I think that like for us, there's, like you said, there has to be more than a survey. But like if the process was for when you go to the 4 intermediate schools, which are comprehensive where everyone's at, that these were the 6 attributes that came from that community, 5 priorities that came from that community. And we have that times 4. And then that will go into a part of like the feedback that we want to go get from them, that they were added, and then, you know, boil that in the mix with all the community members that are gonna be part of that stakeholder group also.
So Dr. Lewis, if we could use your tools to efficiently capture the information that we're gonna go into the community and get, I think that would be helpful.
Are we doing this?
Well, not like,
Not even the district. I mean, who's facilitating that? Are we gonna have our district people facilitate that, or we're asking for someone else to facilitate? I'm talking board members.
okay, Dr. Lewis, will you do it?
So that certainly changes the scope of work or what have you in terms of it's additional, it's additional trip for me out here. I'm happy to do it. You know, it's the script is gonna be the same for each of the 4 meetings.
Yeah.
The data collected is gonna be reflective of those respective communities.
Yeah, could we do 2 nights, like, I don't know, like 2 buildings on one night, 2, however, somebody.
So if it's cold and it's dark, you know, it gets dark at 4:30. I'm just saying, you gotta, just, but you're getting collected, people that wanna give will give, but I'm saying, we have to make that effort so that people know that we're trying to.
Yeah, so if it's not me, I certainly would help with the construction of the presentation as well as positioning the facilitator to have the tools to go and collect.
Do you think it's best if it comes from Mattel or if it comes from the district?
So, you can make a case for both. I can make the case that optically, it might look better and be, give the appearance, not an appearance, because that sounds bad, but show that you all are willing to come to the community to listen. We're willing to come where you are to hear your story and then take that back and work together as a unit to try to address that particular issue. So there's the case for you guys going out into the field because you're representing the community as the elected officials. There's also the impartiality of a neutral person coming in who's also facilitating the process that here, I need to hear from you. Here's the question that we're asking in all of the communities. Here's the information. Here's how it's going to be shared back with the board. And here's what the next steps are.
Is it redundant to have both, or is that a great thing? If you or someone from your team, hopefully you facilitates this, but the board is physically there and to show that we are genuinely interested and willing to come out in the dark and the cold, et cetera, to hear what community members have to say, and we want to use that information for X.
No, it's not redundant at all. Like, so when we did this work in Columbus City Schools, which is the largest district in the state of Ohio, the whole board didn't come to each meeting, but board members were assigned to the different regional meetings, and they showed up and we went and facilitated the listening tours in each of the different, quadrants of the city.
Dr. Keyser, can I ask, what are your thoughts?
I think it's, you know, we've had this discussion that there's some concern that having, whether it be my, district personnel or the board conducting these listening sessions, that through our recent history, there might be some concerns around that. So I do like the idea of having a facilitator who is neutral party. I do like the idea of having, and I would be at all of them, but to have board members assigned to regions. That would be, if we did 4, it'd be, you know, two individuals at each one, and one person would overlap. But if there was, that would be my preference.
And that makes sense. That you all would be on the ground hearing from the community.
At that point, we wouldn't need to participate in numbers like we're doing, because we've done that already here.
Correct.
But we're just, they're listening.
I like it.
So,
Okay.
and that way building that timeline would then give us the start date for.
So then I guess let's ask this question and work backwards, because to get 4 community sessions in between now and the winter break, unlikely. Because other obligations that I'll be checking around doing. And not saying it's impossible. You know, if it was a situation where I'm coming here for a couple days, you know, to get it done, that certainly could potentially work. But if the drop dead date for, let's start making things happen on the plan. If we want to be going into 22-23 school year, we're trying to do things that are related to this plan we just drafted. August is not the drop dead date. So that's, so is it June? Is that when the school year ends and we want to be able to say the plan is done and adopted by the board in June? We spend July thinking about how we want to start the school year with it. Because like, is the first part of the next school year all awareness building around here's our plan, here are the goals, objectives, and strategies, or are you guys trying to have something where on day 1, we expect people to be doing these things? Because if we finish the plan in June, and everybody's going on break in July, August 1, unless you're gonna use the first part of so let's talk about that.
So our first day of school will be September 1st. So we'll have, we finish in June, we'll have July and August to do any discerning and communicating so that we could roll up with our students coming back.
But are educators who are on break expected to absorb and learn a new system to be ready to hit the ground running while they're on break?
I think it depends on what we end up, as we build that plan. I think we have to be thinking through those particular pieces so that we know that if we build things that intersect with educators, how are we going to do all of that? We may have to build that implementation plan right alongside the finalization of the strategic.
Which is why you have somebody who's gonna own the work on that writing team. Because now they know, here's what we've identified as priorities, goals, and strategies. How do I now operationalize that? So they have to be thinking, not only in the moment, but long-term around what are the supports that have to go into place in order for us to be able to start doing something towards this in August when the school year starts.
So is it realistic to build like a staggered rollout? Because I don't want any piece of this to be rushed, and I want to be respectful of when people are off, let them be off. So in the planning of it, to think about, okay, administrators can start this period of adoption now, educators can start this then. Is it able to build it into the system to work that way?
I think it is certainly possible to do that. I think if the leaders of the work are empowered to give updates to the people that will be affected by their particular work streams throughout the process, then yes, you can do that. So for example, if there's a curriculum issue, say out of this came, we're gonna adopt McGraw-Hill textbooks. And I'm just using that as an example. If the person who is leading that particular work stream is able to give that update and say, hey, here's where we're going with this particular part of the plan, just start to get your minds wrapped around that particular thing, then it won't come as a shock to the system or be this massive rollout or induction that has to happen at the end of the plan if they can give little updates throughout the course of it.
One way that I would think about it is like, we need to have a roadmap to say we're going here, starting next school year. So out of the plan we're developing, we have to start the next school year saying we're going in a certain direction. I think that in that first year, the 22-23 school year, like the actionable things that need to be done, if they're limited to the things that the board needs to do, while awareness of the total plan is being developed, because getting the 7 board members in line to things that need to be done to support is easier than trying to the whole organization. So in that first year as the plan is being operated, if it's the things that the board members and the superintendent need to do together, that's done in the first year while the awareness of the plan and other things are there. And then when you get to the 23-24 year, people have had the time to build up into the things that they're supposed to do in the other areas.
I like that.
And to Sean's point, one of the things that we would do is, in terms of the priorities, the goals, we would actually put a timeline together for the goals. Is this particular goal can that be accomplished during the 22-23 school year? Is this goal 24-25? Is this goal 20? But then they'll start to see, here are the things that we're going to tackle year 1 of the plan. Here are other things that are going to come in subsequent years. So it doesn't have to be, we got this plan, we're doing everything September 1 of 2022.
I like that.
And then, with the process that we have, at the building level through the continuous improvement process, those timelines, buildings start working on those in the spring. We will be far enough along in the visioning process that we'll have competencies for the learning profile. We'll have the priority areas. Those will be things that schools can have at the ready while they're starting to build their plans for the next year. And then as we finalize the plan and we say, okay, here's a lot of those priority areas, that will be the last stage of the process.
I think that's the final word for the afternoon.
I was just going to say that really ties it up nicely, and I love where all the conversation is going. I think this is really great stuff. So I'm looking forward to discussing it more at governance next week. Dr. Lewis, I just want to thank you so much, and then I'm going to yield the mic here. This was really great, everybody.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the show.
He is.
That's fantastic. So there, I mean, if we have a seal of saying, that means our board meetings are pretty interesting.
We've always been interesting. Right, anything to adjourn? It's 12:59. Dr. Lewis, is there anything else you need from us?
No, I'm going to provide a written summary of my understanding of what took place today, as well as the data collected today, to Dr. Keyser and Ms. Miller in the middle of next week. And then we can start to get the party rolling.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your work in facilitating us today, and all the board members for your participation. Like we said, some of this will continue in governance, and then we'll come back and the full board bring their up to date with moving it along and progress. Looking for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.